Okay, we are here for the very first UGAT. I think I got the name right. Yes, yeah, it's the first. And you got it for. It just came into existence about I think less than a month ago when I did a post. It was really about talking about the givers, and I created this acronym, Unabashedly Giving, all the time. So the whole idea about here is really to showcase individuals who are living the UGAT life, and I'm lucky to have Kelly with me, who's been a past guest on the Teflon Tales. Welcome back, Kelly, to kick off UGAT.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I don't know. I feel like you put a lot of pressure on me that I'm living the you got it life. I mean, thank you. I mean, I try to, but I don't know that I would be the poster child. I'm sure you can do much better.
See, it's good you're coming in first because hey, there is no bar here, right?
There we go. Perfect. I like that.
So talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we can dive in.
Sure. So my name's Kelly. I am born an American, but now I live in Australia. That is my home. I used to work in the tourism industry, but went into academia and became a business school professor. And I did a lot of career coaching on the side while I was in academia. I left academia in December, and now that's what I do full time. Is I do a lot of career strategy and help people find jobs. It's been an interesting year, definitely an interesting time to be doing this. So. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
All right, so diving in, so this whole concept about giving, which is really all this is about, right? The first mental obstacle, right, which
Mm-hmm.
is, do I have anything to give? I think that imposter syndrome, call it what you will, right? And looking at what's your experience been in terms of getting over that first hurdle of saying, hey, I have something to give, no matter whether you're starting off like in your case, switching careers, or somebody like brand new into the workplace. How do you get past that first obstacle?
Well, it's funny because it's very similar to whenever I work with somebody who's looking for a job, is that they are always questioning, am I qualified? Do I have anything unique? And that's the thing, is that, everybody has some unique story, whether it's where they came from, what they do, what their hobbies are. So I think if you look hard enough, everybody has something to give. And that's the biggest thing, is I think a lot of people really undersell themselves.
Mhm.
And it's almost like this is one of those times where humility is not to your benefit. Feel free to be proud and brag about what you do, because very often people will come back and say, oh, well, I would actually like to learn more about that. And then that very much can start the conversation. So I think that if you do a little bit of an inventory of, what it is that interests you, what your skills are, that inevitably you will find something that you have to give. And nothing that you can give is too small. It's going to benefit somebody. There's no doubt about that.
So taking a different lens on the same question, right, which is, hey, I have X amount of working hours during the day. I have
Mm-hmm.
these responsibilities, I have these obligations, financial, health, and all these other things. I can barely take care of myself, and now, like, I'm supposed to give to others, right? So the question is, how does somebody get over that? Okay, and truth be told, I mean, lots of people are struggling, and there's lots of issues that they have to deal with. No
Mm-hmm.
question about that, right? But again, and I know lots of people we know that once that giving starts to actually helps you become a better human being, a better father, better mom, a better husband,
Yeah.
all the other things that you talk about, right? So how like where did that like dawning of that emotion or realization come upon you?
Right. So last night my puppy got sick.
Oh wow, okay.
And yes, it was very sad. And so I spent most of the night up with my puppy, and so part of it does come down to, sometimes you just have to do what you've got to do. And so, we're forced into that situation where we have to give, like when your puppy gets sick.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, it is very much, I mean, yes, we all have a lot of commitments and we all have things that, often we look at, that take priority. But, there often is something that comes back to you from giving, whether it is satisfaction in an accomplishment, very often they're unexpected, benefits. We meet somebody that could lead to, a new job or a new opportunity or whatever it may be. And so again, you don't have to give everything, even just a small, amount, whether it's, giving a comment to somebody or giving a little bit of feedback or, whatever it may be, because particularly over the last year, I was going to say, obviously I have clients that I work with and I spend lots of time with them and they pay me. But I have had lots of people, send me messages just asking random questions about different things. Should I go to graduate school? What do you think about this job? Is this, a safe place to be considering moving to? Whatever for this job, whatever it may be. Well, it only takes a few minutes out of my time and out of my day. And, a lot of times that's actually come back to me where somebody that I've answered a question for has come back and said, oh, okay, well, now I would like to work with you. Or, they send somebody to my podcast and, they become a follower. So it's actually, if you're looking to build your tribe, build your fan following, very often this is an unintended consequence that happens from by doing that.
So this actually leads into the very next question, right, which is about mental health. And the first thing you have to do is take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else, right?
Yep.
And even in that situation of exactly what you were talking about over here, where people reaching out to you saying, hey, Kelly, I need you to kind of give me some advice over here. And I know you're doing this, and I know I'm doing this, and there are lots of others that we know are doing this, is turning that around and seeing, hey, that there are some common trends over here. And therefore, even to your point about the Olympics ends, but there's so much to be learned from what happened at that event, seeing the athletes and the amazing things that they did, and turning that into a video, right? So talk a little bit about how does somebody make the transition, because it's quite likely if you're viewed as a giver and people start reaching out to you, you're going to get burnt out just like getting to, there's only X amount of hours in a day that you have, right? But again, doing what you're doing and transitioning that into, hey, creating these really compelling short videos. So the broader silent majority, which may never have the courage to reach out to you, and or people who'd otherwise reach out to you, now can consume what you're creating, right? How does that shift happen?
Right. Well, it's actually really interesting because I remember when I started to really build up my presence on LinkedIn and some other social platforms, for a really long time, it seems as if you're putting information out there and nobody's saying anything. And you're going, well, is anybody listening? Is anybody paying attention? Do they like me? Should I do this? And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, somebody you've never heard of says, oh, well, I've watched your last 25 videos and now I have a question, and so it can definitely be daunting, and it can be, you really start to question yourself. But the biggest thing that I've sort of found solace in is just knowing that I'm bettering myself by putting that information out there. I'm learning more. And actually now, to be very honest, a very large percentage of the information I put out there is totally based on questions that people send me. And very often it's just a one-line question. I actually just made a video today.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that right before I asked the question.
I haven't uploaded it yet, but okay. I literally just made a question today that said, a follower of mine asked me this. So here's my answer for him and anybody else that might be interested. So it's great because I actually don't have to do the mental exercise of figuring out what I want to talk about next. He did it for me. So that's the thing, and that's one of the big benefits, that putting that out there, you inadvertently get things back, and then it's like this nice domino effect, right?
Yeah, it's amazing you mentioned that, right? Because I think for me, it took a while to realize that, hey, there are these trends over here, and in order to kind of take care of oneself is to be a little bit more proactive and kind of do what you did, which is look at that. So going back, and if you put your business school professor hat on, right, and a lot of it is ROI. And that terminology is kind of baked into anybody, whether you're starting a business, whether you're part of a large corporation, and in the UGAT community, right? The return, exactly to your point, could be 25 videos later, somebody got impacted and they reached out to you, right? So if you start measuring ROI based on, hey, 5 videos out there, how many followers, how many likes, how many comments, we're not going to get anywhere. I mean, so is that wisdom of ROI, has that changed to something different? Is it permanent? And how does somebody who's metrics based,
Mhm.
look at it and say, okay, is it X? Is it Y? What changes?
Yeah. Speaking of somebody who is metrics based, I used to teach statistics and research
Oh, okay,
methods.
so perfect.
So for me, everything is a data point. It really is. And it's interesting because when I first started, launching into for a very long time, um, my career coaching was entirely word of mouth. Everybody was recommended to me. I didn't have a website. I didn't have any social media presence. And when I decided to make this my full-time gig, I said, okay, I really need to work on this. And I started learning about, what is TikTok and, looking at Instagram, all these different things. So it's been a very interesting learning year for me. And one of the things that I did is I started listening to a lot of podcasts. And a podcast that I listened to, somebody made the comment, you need to be prepared to have zero comments, zero business for like a year. And just keep doing it. And so that's what I said. I said, okay, I'm going to do this for a year. And if I get nothing back, that is okay. Once I hit that 1 year mark, then I'll start thinking about, do I need to change? What do I need to do? But during that year, because I've been creating so much content, I've become a better writer. I've become better at videos. I've, learned how to use different elements and how to, I make one video for LinkedIn and then I just post it on TikTok and all these other places that people can get the information from. So it's interesting because it's like every client that I have comes from a completely different place. So that's really what I can understand, that desire for that ROI and being able to measure it. And my husband's an engineer, so he's also kind of going, well, how do you know it's working? And part of it is just saying, I'm going to stay consistent and it will come in time. And that's the thing. I remember when I was speaking of beforehand, we were chit-chatting about company names and branding UGAT and that sort of thing. And I said it took me a really long time to choose a company name. So my company name is Master the Job Search, and I probably brainstormed 500 different names, and they were all taken. And they were all they all had Facebook groups. They all had accounts here and there and everywhere, but they had been dead for years. Because somebody had taken that name, created a Facebook page, put up 15, posts, nobody commented on them, and then they abandoned it. And so there were all these names floating around that essentially had been used previously. And that's part of the deal, is that you have to know that just remaining in the game will get you part of the way there. And it will obviously, increase your likelihood of success that much more, just sticking with it.
Okay, so you jumped the gun and you're already ahead of my
Oh, okay.
next
Sorry.
question, which is I think, at least for me, I can tell you honestly that that's probably been the hardest one, which is consistency, right? And the ability to kind of show up, right? Like Brené Brown says, it's like, and clearly, I mean, you've put a year out there, right? And clearly, in your case, just based on the fact we're connected and we have lots of common groups, there's strong resonance that's happening. But somebody who's starting brand new, right, where the whole concept of giving isn't at the scale that we're talking about over here, right, and yet he or she has to start doing that consistently. Where does that where do they draw their energy from to kind of remain consistent?
Well, I would say one of the big things is you cannot be an island. You do have to make your friends and reach out to people. And, so for instance, every once in a while I get a post that doesn't say, I don't get a whole lot of comments or likes or whatever, but I also know that there's a very good chance that you'll comment on it because we just constantly, we see each other's, information. So I think that's part of it, is developing those relationships. And, for instance, I just started working with a new client yesterday, and I said, okay, you're your homework is to every day find 5 people on LinkedIn and connect with them. And don't just send a blank connection, say hello and get into a conversation, and then start, responding, posting comments on their information, on whatever posts they have. And then that information will build, that connection will build. And then when you start putting your information out there and your content out there, then people are that much more likely to respond to you. So I think that that's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, so coming back to the you aspect of it, right, and especially again, given the world that we're living in, and I mean, you're probably the best poster child for that in terms of the number of different experiments you've put out there, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is, and it's one thing to say, okay, so I'm good at this, and therefore I'm unabashedly talking about this or posting about
Mm-hmm.
this. But there's another aspect of that, which is when you're a newbie at something, right,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just starting out,
Mm-hmm.
how does one get past that mental block of saying, okay, let me at least get to a bare bone stage before giving back? And again, and I know this, which is like, hey, there's lots of people who haven't even started. So even if you've taken one step, it's
Mm-hmm.
more than thousands of others. So therefore, you should start giving back even after kind of putting that first step. Like, what has helped you get past that thing of say, even as you start experimenting, you
Mm-hmm.
start giving back almost instantaneously.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that part of it is, as you're doing that and as you develop those skills, you start to formulate a bit of a connection with other people, and you learn from them just naturally. And I think that that's part of what you need to set yourself up for, and not be afraid to make comments and to put yourself out there. Yes, some people will be critical, and that's to be expected. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, sometimes when you say things that are
Yeah.
polarizing, people can really have a reaction, and then the next thing you know, you might have 1,000 extra followers the next day. It really only takes one. And I think that that's the thing to keep in mind, is that just make that effort, put yourself out there, start giving, even if you don't have a whole lot to give, and eventually it will come back to you. And it will take time, but it also will probably take a lot less time than you think. And of course, anybody who's ever heard, the overnight success, of course, we always say the overnight success takes about 10 years. Anyway, I've heard anywhere from 7 to 8 to 10 years. So you have to know that people, a lot of times, they don't take notice and give you the credit that's due until you've really, reached the peak and kept going.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you mentioned that, right? But there's that peak that you have to reach in their mind. The other aspect of it, which I've seen over and over again, is they have to have a need which matches with what you're giving them, and that's on their own timeline, right? So sometimes we get caught
Mm-hmm.
up, and this was my penultimate question to you, which is, uh, again, going back to that business hat, which is, I have put in so much for you and I've spent so much time for you. What are you doing for me? Versus saying, hey, this is not a symmetrical world, right? Which means I might end up doing a lot for person X and he or she may never repay me back, and I shouldn't be expecting that. But to your point, the business or the opportunity or the network come from unexpected sources, right? So again, how have you kind of dissociated yourself from, hey, the giving could happen in this territory, but then the taking, even without you asking for it, could happen from somewhere else?
Here's the thing, is that I think that it's funny because, and especially being a former professor, you don't get thanks from your students. You normally get a lot of attitude and a lot of, oh, I can't believe I didn't get the grade I wanted. And then years later, you might
Yeah.
happen to run into them and they say something. So I think that for most of us, we will never know the impact that we had on anyone. It's just unlikely. So I grew up in a very financially insecure family. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and through church, my father met this gentleman who had daughters that were a bit older than me. And he said, Kelly's pretty smart. My daughters are going to this private school, then they got scholarships. You should really have Kelly take the test and do the interview and see if she gets accepted. And he knew that I did get accepted, but he and my father, they didn't see each other for years. And then my father, actually, sometime within the last year, he happened to run into this gentleman in the grocery store or something. And he said to this man, Thank you so much for suggesting that Kelly take the test. She, as you know, she went there, but because she went to this school, she got this great internship. She went to an Ivy League uni. She now lives in Australia. She's done X, Y, and Z. And the man actually said, "Oh, wow. I mean, that's great. I'm glad to hear, she's successful, but I had no idea that my one comment made such an impact on you." Cool. And that's the thing is I think for so many of us, we will never know the impact that we had on people. And so, I think that when we're fortunate enough to get that thanks or that business or whatever it may be, we should appreciate it. But we should also know that we're impacting so many more people, and we'll never know. And that's just the way that it is. Yeah.
Wow. So last question, and again,
Mhm.
so what again? So put yourself in the receiver's shoes for a minute, right? Which is, what is it about the UGATers that really gets your attention, right? I mean, if there's one thing that I'd say, hey, what's the one quality about UGATers that makes Kelly want to sit up and take notice of him or her?
Oh, I think that wow. Okay, that's a bit of a tough one because I would actually say that the one word that kind of comes to mind is selflessness. I feel like there are so many people that I see on LinkedIn and other platforms where, they're just giving information and they're offering advice. And, I happen to listen to a podcast and one of the big LinkedIn influencers was on there and I really liked what he said. So I sent a message and said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I heard you as a guest on this person's podcast. Thanks. It was really, I learned a lot." And his response was, "Oh, hey, well, why don't we, chit chat and we can get to know each other?"
Wow.
And so we had a call, and I expected either he was going to sell me something, which he didn't, or I mean, I wasn't really sure, but in the end, so he goes, "Oh, okay, well, we had a little bit of a chit chat," and then he goes, "Okay, so what kinds of questions do you have for me? How can I help you?" And I was kind of
Wow.
like, "Whoa, okay, this is awesome." And that was it. I mean, there was no expectation. In the end, I actually gave him a LinkedIn recommendation because I just thought he's asked for absolutely nothing for me, and he's given me so much information that I've just learned in 30 minutes with him. And so I think that it's actually incredible. Some of the people that I've met that I would definitely classify as UGATers, I mean, they really just go above and beyond, and that really goes a long way, certainly for me. And I think that people recognize that selflessness and that willingness to contribute, and I think it's great that they're good models, good role models in that case. More of us can learn those sorts of things.
Great. And again, final question, and you got to send me this within 24 hours after our
Okay.
session ends now, which is one UGATer that you think should be on the show, right? So
Oh,
that's my again, you can
okay,
think about it,
yes.
you have 24 hours. You don't, it
Okay,
maybe this LinkedIn influencer could be somebody else who's not
okay,
an influencer, doesn't matter. But again, they exemplify the UGATer trait, and I want to have
okay,
him or her on the show. So again, Kelly, thanks for doing what you do, and
okay.
thanks for kicking this off and waking up
Sure.
early. Hope your pup recovers soon and everybody is back to a happy family.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You have a good one too.
You too. Thanks, Kelly.